Protests in America. In recent memory, there is the 1965 Selma March for Civil Rights, thousands who descended on Washington, D.C. to protest the Vietnam War. The recent women's marches that have taken place across the country in protest of President Trump and his policies. And at the State of the Union, members of Congress, like New York State's Carolyn Maloney, are wearing black in protest. Some are boycotting the speech altogether, all in show of displeasure at the current administration. Joining us now to discuss the protest and resistance in America, both past and present, is Dr. Yahuru Williams, professor of history and the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Minnesota's University of St. Thomas. Professor, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jenna.
All right, so first I want to get a sense of the protest, the mobilization of people that we see and have seen in America's past, but it seems like there's something different now because in addition to protesting against policies and cultural norms, at least of the moment, there's a call for the removal of the president. We haven't seen that before, have we?
No, that's what marks this moment is unique. We have seen mass mobilizing, mass organizing protests in the past around issues. We could talk about what happened in the 19 teens and 20s around earning the right to vote for women. We've certainly seen mobilization on the local and state level against legislators or governors, but a mass mobilizing effort to remove or unseat a president is new territory.
Well, what is it about this presidency that's making it so different, that's creating this new territory?
I think it's a lot of the division that's associated with Donald Trump and his leadership, his inability really to speak beyond his base. And in so doing, what he's done is created a situation whereby people are looking for a way to articulate their concerns, not only about the administration, but to also register that in a way that signals that they believe that the country's heading in the wrong direction. And the one way to do that, we think about marching on Washington, it's symbolic in that sense, because that's the property of the people, the idea that that's the seat of government. If you want to make a difference in New York, you march on Albany. If you want to make a difference in Pennsylvania, you march on Harrisburg. If you want to demonstrate to the nation your concerns, you march on Washington.
Well, what about the notion of members of Congress who are also participating in protests, either by, for example, with the State of the Union, choosing not to attend or attending wearing all black? Is that a first for us?
No, not necessarily, not unusual at all. I think people will remember back to President Obama's one of his State of the Union addresses where a gentleman a congressman stood up and screamed, "You lie," in the middle of the president's speech. Division although not very common, we can go back to the Civil War and talk about the period before the Civil War where you saw this type of division and you saw congressmen, senators, and representatives behaving in ways that one wouldn't consider civil. I think what's unique about this moment is the volume. And again, we don't see this on this scale very often. Perhaps the New Deal would be a moment, a touch point where you could talk about this, certainly the era of civil rights, and again, before the Civil War. I think the reason that this feels so palpable at this moment is because it's been so long since we've experienced anything like this as a nation.
Well, a lot of times people speak about history in the sense of there's ebbs and flows where there's, a big rise in a movement and then there'll be a lull and et cetera. And you were just saying that it's been so long. So based on what we've seen before, where there's been movements of people like this pushing for change, does that give us any idea of what we can expect with the movements that we see now going forward? And that includes positive and negatives.
Well, it's difficult to forecast. I mean, this is one of the interesting things about this. So we can look at right now in the United States, the Me Too movement, if you want to define it in that way. Black Lives Matter is a movement, and the intersections between those various movements. But really, historically, when you're seeking to project, sometimes a movement is measured on whether the demands that are articulated by its founders or its supporters are met. Clearly, with the civil rights movement, you mentioned Selma. That was all about voting rights and the idea that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 had not been enough to ensure voting rights for African Americans, and so the Selma campaign became necessary. In the present moment, this movement could shift in ways because, again, it doesn't have a set number of demands, or at least clearly articulated demands. That may change. That may end up sustaining the movement. It may result in the movement fracturing in some way and being redefined around some other principles. But it's difficult to tell. I mean, as strange as it sounds, because this is so visceral for so many people, we're still really in the early stages. Trump has only been in office for a year.
But has there ever been a period in American history where the rhetoric had gotten so visceral, that people's emotions were so high, that the only direction for a movement to go in was fracture in some sort? And of course, I'm referring to the Civil War.
Yeah, absolutely. The Civil War Civil War would be a very good example. During the New Deal, people forget there was a lot of dissension against FDR. I mean, we now look back at that period and consider FDR to be one of the nation's greatest presidents for helping to shepherd the nation through the Great Depression. But there was opposition to him, including from people like Father Coughlin and others who were anti-New Deal and very staunch in their angst about where the nation was headed and their vitriol against the president. But again, this is unprecedented in the sense that the target is Donald Trump, and he seems to have become symbolic of so many other things in the nation, partly because of his rhetoric, partly because of the manner in which he was elected, and partly because the mood of the nation as a whole has changed, as we're seeing so many people manifesting concerns around issues of social issues, even as the economy is performing very well. And that again, adds to the kind of oddness and uniqueness of this moment. The concerns are not general. We can look back to the Civil War. Those concerns were in some sense engulfed the entire nation because of the nature of slavery.
Well, Professor Williams, I do want to get in one last question before you go. And you did mention that volume is a big part of what's making this so intense and palpable right now. And we have a factor that didn't exist before, and that's social media. What role is social media and, of course, hashtag culture playing in these movements?
Moving aside from the president tweeting and things like that, sometimes there's a bit of clicktivism or hashtag activism where there's a lot of volume because people are on social media sharing memes or liking or retweeting certain things. But is that really translating in the street? So are the numbers turning out? Are people writing letters? Are people engaged in actions that are moving the needle in a more tangible way? And one of the complaints or critiques of hashtag activism is exactly that point, that it's very easy for people to engage in that way, but it's limited in the sense that it only occurs in this social media space, and does it extend beyond that? But it certainly has changed the way that Americans engage. It also has reinforced the ability of people to really retreat to their comfortable corner, and that in and of itself hurts our ability to have larger dialogue.
All right. Listen, Professor Williams, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program and giving us some perspective as to where we are in this moment with so many different social movements going on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.